This video will be the second in the series for September 18th, where we are really focusing on the I, information in geographic information systems. Last video gave a quick introduction to tables in ArcPro and how they're processed. And in this video, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the attribute table, its structure, how to add a column or a field, how to delete it, the properties, how to calculate a field, so on and so forth. So think about today's, or this video's rather, lesson as how to expand upon and edit information, right? How to expand upon and edit attributes that are in a table. If you're following along with these videos, we're going to do pretty much everything we need to in this video and then the follow-up, because I imagine I'll split this into two, all with this one file here, neighborhoods with information. Now, I will continually remind you guys a great first step whenever you're engaging with new pieces of data, and it's less relevant right now, obviously, because I'm talking you through each piece of data and I've provided it for you. But once we get past that 4th or 5th week and we're really more familiar with how to download our own data and find our own data sources, this is so paramount to engaging with data so that you can understand how it's structured, what you're looking at, what information you have at your disposal, so on and so forth. What I have here is same thing as previous, a series of neighborhoods with their names. Some of the same information you've seen previous. But a couple of additional pieces of information too. I have information about the total number of jobs. I have a piece of information about the acreage of parkland. And I have something about the district. As you guys progress through planning school, you'll learn how the city of Philadelphia and other cities are organized into, if not administrative, at least geographic sort of districts that help sort of with planning purposes, right? So some districts are the river wards versus the upper northeast versus upper north, so on and so forth. And really what we're about to do is we'll learn a little bit more about each of these fields and these attributes, and then we'll start adding some new ones and then move on to sort of calculating and so on and so forth. So, but before we even get to sort of adding, I want to show you, some information about each of the field. And a good way to start maybe is even just to highlight or hover over the top of the field that you're looking at here. And you can see certain things start to pop up, like when I'm over name, that thing under type says text, and then it says 20. And then I come into list name, and it's also text, and it says 20. But I come to shape length, and it's double. Right, I come to the population 2000 and it's double. Double, double, double. I'm not going to get an integer, but I would get an integer if I see it, and then I'm back to text. This observation, I think, should help you recognize that different fields have different underlying data structures. And so this is pretty important to how data is processed in ArcGIS, and maybe unfamiliar to those whose only really background, with tabular data is Excel, where this just isn't as much the case. Excel, theoretically, fields have a data structure, and if you really get into it, a field could be a text versus an integer, but we're so used to visualizing and quickly being able to, see something as a number with a comma or a dollar sign that we maybe forget the underlying structure. And what I mean by this is that once we set a field as something, we can't ever change it, right? So if I make a field a text, but I meant for it to include numbers that I would process, then it would fail, right? I wouldn't be able to do that because it's looking for text-based characters. And I think the best way to get started with this is let's just actually add a field to start, right? We'll do some exploration in a future video with what happens when we right-click each field and what we can do with the attributes. But to start, I really just want to come over here to this add field point. And notice, because of that point I made that there's multiple pathways in ArcGIS, You could also come to data right, and accomplish a similar thing here. You could go to fields, and you'll find yourself in the exact same place I'm about to take you, right? So either look at the attributes and hit add, or come up to data and hit fields. Either way, you're going to find yourselves in a sub-window called fields, where you are not looking at the specific information in each cell anymore, but you're now looking at the underlying data structures. I'm a field named name. You can call me something different. I'm a text, right? Notice how it's gray. I can't change it. If I'm a number, what is my numeric format? Weird concepts you may or may not know: precision, scale, and length. This is the metadata beneath each piece of information that you set at the beginning of a shapefile or a DBF. And what it lets you do is it determines what can go in that field moving forward. Right, so let's maybe just name a field here that we'll call integer. And we'll hit enter. And if I go to the data type, I can see that there are 6 to which I can choose from. Now, I think it's probably easier just to treat short and long and float and double as cousins of themselves, and then date and text are different. So you can almost think of it as like 4 categories here. Short and long are integers. What is an integer? I don't know. I wonder if any of you even answered that question to yourself, or normally you would in the classroom. But an integer is a whole number. 0, 1, 2, 3, -1, -2. Right? A number that has no decimal points. If you want something to have a decimal point, you pick float or double. Now these just have to do with the number of digits you can store. So I tend to pick long for my integers and double for my floats, or for my decimals. And again, you'd pick a decimal when you really need to show precision, right? If you're maybe looking at the percentage of something, right? And 0.65, which would be 65%, is definitely different than 0.656, 65.6, right? Or if there's sort of nuance that requires a decimal to differentiate, you'd want to be able to pull that in. Date is what you'd imagine. It's date. And text is characters. This is going to be an interesting one I'll show you in a few minutes. What do I mean by characters? What do I mean by text? Well, the best thing to think is that it's anything in between quotation marks. And even though you can't see the quotation marks, hopefully in a minute that crazy talk I'm giving will make a little bit more sense. So let's pick long for the integer. All right, precision and scale, making a little bit less for this. You only really have to put in the precision, so maybe we'll do 10. That means it can have 10 digits. And I'll hit enter. Notice it's green. I'm going to click here to add a new field, and maybe I'll call that double. And for this one, I'm going to set you as a double. Now, in a later video today, we will run through geodatabases again. And you'll see that you don't have to do this step when you're working with a geodatabase. But when you're in a shapefile, you need to enter this information. Precision means total digits. Scale means digits to the right. Right? So it's just if you're setting sort of a limit on the structure here. Excuse me. And for example, if we said precision was 8, so 8 total digits, and scale was 4, 4 to the right of the decimal, the biggest number I could make would be 999,000, right? 9999.9999. 8 digits, 4 to the right. We'll keep it sort of simple here. Maybe we'll say you can have up to 10 digits and 5 of them to be to the right. And last, I want to create something called text. We'll come up here and pick text from here. The default length, right, you can have 255 characters. You can change that if you want. It's up to you. Now, we can also change the alias here, right? I'll probably only do it for integer just to demonstrate something. But I'm going to name this, cheese fries. If only to just demonstrate the absolute ridiculousness of naming something cheese fries, but more to just show you sort of what happens when I do that. Just like with editing last week, you need to come up here and hit save, right? Save is what allows you to see what's happened to your field and what you can sort of enter into it. So come on up here and hit save. We'll give it a second to figure itself out. And I'll X out and come over, and I'll now be able to see a field called cheese fries, right? But, you know, not actually cheese fries. That's just its alias, right? That's a random name that I've given to it. And I can come back up here to fields and remind myself, wait a minute, you're not actually called cheese fries, right? Your real name is integer. And if I wanted, I could put that back to integer, you know, not wanting to confuse people that we have a random field named cheese fries. So to start, they populate themselves with 0 because there's no number. They look relatively similar here. And text also sort of populates itself as blank. So I'm going to pause this first video here, and we're going to pick up in the next one and do our preliminary introduction to now calculating the fields, right? If this first video was how you add a field, the next one is going to be on how you calculate it, and I'll show you some of the basics, and then we'll do a couple more advanced tips and techniques for calculating fields.